I've got a story that really moved me when I did it, about a guy named Glenn Toppen, who his family was across the street from the Sanders, who had actually come from Germany. Different kinds of diversity. And they were, it turns out that Crystal's, the mom, the daughter, needed a kidney. And it was touch and go, what her prospects were. And Crystal was talking to Diane Toppen, Glenn's wife, and mentioned the situation. Diane went home that night and talked to Glenn and said, and her blood type is, I forget what it was, and he said, that's my blood type. And he volunteered right away to give her a kidney. Wow. Which is always, you know, a notable sacrifice. And it worked. Things went well. And it indicates, you know, just the capacity of what a block party can do.
Wow, yeah.
But this story goes even further, because when I did my first book talk, I decided to get in touch with Crystal to see how it was going, because it had been 20 years since I did this story. And she said, well, it's mixed. Well, first of all, Glenn Toppen had died within 10 years of congestive heart failure. It wasn't related to the kidney. But Cynthia, the daughter, was fine with the kidney, ended up marrying a guy in Canada, and they have a child. But she's now suffering from a chronic illness, and her future is kind of up in the air. So Crystal and Diane came to the first book talk, and they brought me a packet of stuff about Glenn, so that I got to know him a lot better than I knew him in that very brief interview I did 20 years ago. It turned out he was an interesting guy, fascinating guy. He was working in social services most of his life. He had trouble with alcohol and beat it. You know, there was a lot more to the story. And you know, Cynthia's case up in Canada, having that illness, was also much more to the story. And it made me realize, when you're telling a story, those stories go on when you're done interviewing. And look at you. They're interviewing you in the attic. Now you've written 20 books. It's like, I take full credit for...
yeah, of course, yeah. Well, I did it. In all my dedication, I'm like...
It was a launch.
It was after the interview with Ken that I was inspired for 20 books.
Yes, please say that.
Yeah. Now...
Anyway, I was going to say that it's kind of humbling to hear all that, and know that this story goes on. And even if Cynthia, for some reason, doesn't make it, she's got a son, and that story is going to go on. And it doesn't work out the way you hope it will work out, happily ever after. But it's, when you tell a story, wow, does it open up a lot. I mean, I used to think I used to feel like I was outside of, you know, well, sitting on the sidelines as a journalist, being objective and, you know, listening and observing and then writing about it. And lately I've been feeling like I'm out on the field and up to my neck in community, which is not something I ever thought would happen, and I'm really glad it did.
That's great. So. Yeah. And that's just because you feel like now you're just totally involved and more integrated into the community. You aren't standing off as a journalist and looking,
right,
you know, in that third person sort of looking at it.
Right. And you know, I mean, if you're a journalist for a while, you know that objectivity's bullshit anyway. And so you have to get involved in order to tell the story better.
Right. Right.
And so, and there's just so many stories.